to. We got a couple theist callers too, so I
Ooh.
think we should do that next. Let's talk to Patrick calling in from Florida. Patrick, you're live on Talk Heathen. What's up?
Hi, how are you doing today?
Doing okay, Patrick. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. That one call about the slavery in the Bible. It does say slaves be obedient to your masters. I don't know how you get around that.
I don't know either. And you know what, Patrick? If I went to your house and I saw that you owned somebody or you had indentured servant, I think I'd say that's wrong.
Yeah.
That's just me though. And I'm an atheist and I can't ground my morality in any objective lens. So what does my word matter on the thing, right? Anyway,
Yeah.
Patrick, what do you want to talk to us about today?
I'm more agnostic, but what I would like to say, get into is the is a supernatural God claim a falsifiable claim, or as opposed to like a natural God being a falsifiable claim? You know what I'm saying?
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Like, is it even possible to falsify a supernatural God? It's an interesting question
Hmm.
because I don't know if we can say for sure, right? And this is me personally. I don't have a PhD in philosophy or even in the philosophy of science or anything. I'm just a guy who's read books on this stuff, right? So take whatever I say with a grain of salt. But let's say we do have a figure like Jesus who's here on earth and claims to be supernatural in some way. How do we know for sure that he's doing something supernatural and not something that's just advanced using the laws of nature? That's going to be really hard to tell and probably going to be based on context more than anything. The problem with having a belief like ours, which does rest on the assumption of naturalism, is that anything outside of that assumption is going to be really hard to demonstrate, right? Because if we're looking at science through a naturalist lens, meaning that we think nature is all that exists and we just use the laws of nature to form our ideas about like causality, then that's going to be hard when we talk about claims that inherently involve the supernatural. Now, how do we rectify this and still continue to call ourselves this? Well, I'll tell you this: I haven't seen anybody that comes even remotely close to doing anything supernatural, right? So that's the first
Right.
thing. I don't even think we have the claims to even discuss, right? At
Right.
best, we have some stories
Yeah.
from not even eyewitness testimony if we're talking about the Bible, but even from today, if we're just talking about eyewitness accounts, they're just not super credible. They're not even stuff that we could really look at.
Right.
But I imagine if we're talking about very specific claims, like for example, the multiplication of 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 bread and fish, for example, like that involves matter, right? Assuming that they have physical properties like that, and you can test that under lab conditions and see like is matter being multiplied here, or is it coming from a different source or a pocket dimension or something? Like you can figure some stuff out contextually. But yeah, it is going to be hard. Like a god that inherently exists outside of naturalism would be very hard to look at. But like we haven't even come close to that, in my opinion. I don't
Hmm.
even think we have the uh, grounds to even start that investigation. So what do you think, Cynthia?
You said something, Patrick, that was really interesting that I kind of fixated on a little bit about, a supernatural God versus a natural God. I
Yeah.
first would have to know specifically what you mean by natural God, if we have like an example that can be considered natural God. Because it seems like that, from what I know, that any stories that comport to a god or gods or deities are always operating in the supernatural, not necessarily in the natural. Even
Sure.
if we are talking about Jesus per se, who was born of flesh into the world, and you would consider he was a natural man, but he was still operating per se according to the Bible in the supernatural. He performed miracles, he made blind people see,
Yeah.
he helped the lame to walk, he healed the sick, etc., etc. And we don't necessarily have like any type of way to test whether, as Dan was saying, whether those particular claims that he supposedly did was supernatural. I don't, and I have to agree, I don't necessarily think that there is anything per se that we can point to unequivocally and say that's supernatural, right? Normally what ended up happening is that man or humans per se were looking at, things like, let's just say, the sun, and gave it and deified it, right, for thousands of years, until we figured out exactly what the sun was and what the properties were and how it worked and things of that nature. Same thing with other planets and stars and things of that nature. And even we even did that with the way that the world in of itself, and how we how we interact with nature itself, right? We figured out a lot of different things, as far as like how the earth functions, how different properties function, things that we attributed to considered supernaturalism was, oh, we have a natural explanation, right?
Yeah.
So it's difficult to be able to to even go the route, in my opinion, to even try to falsify anything supernatural, because we don't have like any type of methodology to put it into a test in the first place. Like I would, if I'm just a simple case manager, I don't have like a degree in physics or chemistry or biology or anything like that. But it would, if someone can make me privy to how, oh, scientists are able to test the supernatural by doing X, Y, and Z, I would love to know about that. But
Yeah.
as far as like as far as my knowledge goes, or books I've read or articles that I've read about this particular subject, it's a non sequitur. It's a non-starter. Yeah, that's what I have to say
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah. So there you go. What do you think, Patrick?
You all really break it down. She is awesome. But suffice it to say, Kaku of string theory had said in one video I saw with him talking about this kind of thing, where she said the supernatural versus a natural God, and what Kaku said on it was that Einstein had said we must make the distinction between the supernatural God of, say, Christianity. You pray for that bike for Christmas or whatever, a personal God. And then he said there was the natural God of Einstein and pantheism, and that the universe was something we could actually study with science. So being that it's something we can observe and study, would that be a falsifiable claim? I don't know.
Well,
Yeah.
can I say this really quickly? I personally have an issue with going to natural God, because like we don't have any example per se that I'm aware of where we can really put in the word natural and then God, and work them in the same way. Even when you're talking about a pantheon of gods, in different religions around the world, like say for instance, like we're talking about Hinduism, they had like a pantheon of gods that were that they would assign different tasks that they were able to do. Brahman was the creator, Shiva was the destroyer, Vishnu was I believe was the savior, and then they had like underling gods under them. But all of their supposed powers per se were attributed to the supernatural, something that is superseding human ability, right?
Yeah.
Or nature's ability. So it's very difficult to even like put that in perspective to say natural God. Now I will say, like, if you really wanted to discuss this in a way that to me makes more sense, it was if you want to attest what is considered claims that are supernatural that were attributed to God, okay, and then put it versus naturalism, or what we have observed around us, and and have that, and see how that stacks up. That makes more sense to me. But really just trying to put in natural or nature and then God in the same sentence or same subject matter, it doesn't work very well.
Yeah, I have two quick things on it, and then I think we can go ahead and move on from this conversation. So thank you so much, Patrick, for calling in on this topic. But The one is the claim that Einstein was talking about God, right? So, like, Christian apologists will bring this up and they say, "Oh, well, Einstein was a Christian." He definitely was not a Christian. First of all, he was a Jewish man. But second
Mhm.
off, like, when he was talking about God, he was talking more about a pantheistic kind of God. I mean, he really thought God, as an idea, was the person who maybe rolled the dice. And there's a lot of debate on what he actually did believe, whether he thought there was a literal entity or whether he was just talking in metaphor for a lot of times, and I don't
Mm.
know the man. I don't know the answer to that. But the point is, the man obviously had a respect for science and the respect for the methodologies and tools by which we examine the universe. And maybe he had a deeper reverence for that he called God. But it's actually a more complicated issue there. The other thing is, again, when we talk about this idea of God, I think Cynthia is absolutely correct in pointing this out. What exactly do we mean? I always, again, I'm the guy that uses the atheist label, which is this idea that I don't even make claims as to whether I believe in a God or not with that particular label, if only because I don't know what people mean when they say God. Like, if you're talking about the Christian God, for example, what's been traditionally defined in early sects of Christianity, then yeah, I don't believe that, right? Like, I can very confidently say, if we're talking about, oh, God is just nature, well, I believe nature exists. So I guess in that one sense, I believe in God, but like, is that what people usually mean when they talk about God? It's certainly not what the average Christian means, right? I would argue that the average Christian does mean an entity that has personal interest, that has desires, that has actual effects within the world, like actually affecting it every day. Not everybody Christian believes that, mind you, but it's important when talking about the philosophy of religion to make that distinction. And also, again, I think Christian apologists are correct in pointing out that atheists will sometimes make the presumptions that they do as far as their philosophy of science without actually knowing that they're actively doing it or demonstrating it. Like, yeah, I do assume the case that naturalism exists. Like, I do assume that naturalism is true, rather, and then do use that to evaluate claims. So that can be problematic when examining certain claims, as we talked about when it comes to miracles and stuff. But I also don't know if there's any better way to do it than that, right? Like, I can't
Mm.
just accept every claim willy nilly and have no method of investigating the truthiness of that claim, right? There's a lot of claims every day about what gods are out there and what they're doing in the world, or angels or demons and other stuff. And we have to have a methodology that's consistent. And so far, naturalism has been pretty consistent with that. So, that's my take on that. But Patrick, I'm going to go ahead and let you go here. Thanks so much for giving us a call in. I hope we were able to answer your questions on that, because it is a deeper deeper topic than some people maybe give credit to, I think.
Mm.
But hey, so glad that you called in on that.